So basically, I mean, I feel like these two, even like the funeral scene at Being Mary Jane, I feel like these two films are like great depictions as to like that mental battle of like what we all go through. I know not everybody's going to be like, hey, I'm feeling suicidal today. That does take strength. But even like for my own testimony as it pertains to like mental health in media, I like grew up, like my mom was a print reporter growing up, so I like grew up in media. So I was always like, I started interning in high school at like on my local station, so by the time I got to college, that's kind of how I landed like CNN and like the Times and all these other places. But I've always felt from a young age like anxiety to perform, anxiety to be perfect. But it's like, I'm not perfect, ain't none of us perfect. But I've like for a long time, I feel like I've created that kind of image for myself. So even down to my social media, like for years, like we all post, like I would post how I wanted to be perceived, when in hindsight, like my social media reality was not my real life reality. And so that's kind of what got me to my like suicidal state. Like yeah, it was like a relationship gone bad, but it was kind of like a collection of things. So even like I said, as it pertains to mental health and media, especially in women, we always have to like keep this face. Like it's like whatever's going on in your personal life, cool, but like when you're in front of that camera, like none of that can transfer on camera. And I'm the type of person, like I wear my emotions on my sleeve, so like it'll show. So I think I didn't watch 13 Reasons Why until after I was like out of the hospital, but even going back to recovery. So I got out of the hospital December 12th? Yes, December 12th of 2016. And like even still getting out, I was still very like emotionally unstable, still trying to figure out, like still trying to hold on to like the residue of that relationship. And so it literally, I always tell people like, the exact thing that I tried to flee from is what saved my life, which is community. So a lot of times, you know how like when we all go through stuff, it's like, oh, I'm gonna isolate, oh, I'm gonna go by myself, oh, I don't wanna be bothered. But it's like, isolation will literally kill you. Like it almost killed me, you know? So I started going to, I used to go to our campus Bible study at Ohio State, but I had like stopped going, like I was just very not into that, even being a preacher's kid. And so when I was like fresh out the hospital, like I said, God gave me that vision that like I was gonna do something to help other people. And so I started going regularly again to our campus Bible study and just trying to heal. Like I feel like there's a distinctive difference between healing and getting over things. I feel like my whole life I've just like gotten over stuff. Like, oh, this happened, I'll get over it. But it's like, are you healed or are you just brushing it under the rug? I've brushed them under the rug. So fast forward from like January to about like May. Came up with some stuff, and basically the Lord began to like show me what I was going to do, like show me like through dreams, through prayer, like kind of what I was going to do. So like obviously when you like come to Christ, I'm not trying to be like biblical, but when you come to Christ, you have to go through like a process of sanctification. So I had told the Lord, like, if you get me through this, like I don't know how, but like if you get me through this, like I'll do it, like I'll serve you for real. So he took me through, it's been like a rough journey. Like the process of sanctification, I don't feel like it's just like you get there and it's done, but it's like an everyday process. But yeah, so I lived the movement in May of 2017, and this is literally what I'm like blessed to do. Like yeah, I'm a journalist, like yeah, I'm a news reporter, but like this is what I'm passionate about, is helping break the stigma that society has placed on our mental health. So not even just, like I said, in the African American community, like whether it's women, whether it's just millennials, like I have a heart for mental illness, obviously like because I've been through it. And two, like I have a lot of like documentation like on my website and stuff that you guys can check out on your own. But in one of the videos I always say, like for me, going back to perception, like I'm not the face that you'd be like, oh, you were diagnosed with PTSD, or you were diagnosed, like you were hospitalized for a suicide attempt. But it's just like, that is my reality, you know what I mean? So for me, like I said, like I'm blessed to be able to go to universities and speak. This is the first university I've spoken at as it pertains to like mental health or like my nonprofit. But that is the biggest thing for me. Like my heart cry is for the mentally ill. But more like really in the Black community, just because I feel like in the Black community and even in the church, it's like taboo. So being like the preacher's kid, being this girl who's perceived as like, oh, you've interned for CNN, oh, you have national experience, you've done that, and it's like, oh yeah, and I tried to kill myself too. But for us, I feel like more so, a lot of times, we don't want to heal. You know what I mean? We don't want to get past stuff. Nobody wants to be like, hey, I'm struggling, but reaching out for like help and recovery, that's not a weakness, but that's a sign of strength. Like, I can't do it all, you know? None of us can. So I think that's a big thing that a lot of people miss. There are, when I say countless celebrities that like have went public about them being diagnosed with a mental illness. These are just like a few. But even going back to like the face, like everybody knows Ginger Z, Chris Brown, Selena Gomez, The Rock, and even Kanye West, but this is the reality that a lot of people are struggling with a mental illness. So it's rough. So recovery, 42% of Americans that have struggled with a mental illness refrain from receiving proper treatment. From my own experience, to be honest, fresh out the psych ward, I did not want to see a therapist. When I think of a therapist, I think of someone like sitting on the couch and they're like, so how are you feeling? But it's not like that. And actually, I met with my therapist yesterday and I was telling her, I feel like I need her just as much as I need the Lord. So like it's literally, I feel like I need her because she doesn't just tell me like, well, you know, you have this going on, I think this is what you should do. But she helps me process the pain or like where stuff is like stemming from, and so she forces me to kind of figure it out. And I think that that recovery process, like I said, is like essential to not getting over things but actually healing, because the stigma attached to our mental health is like unacceptable. So some preventative care, what can end the stigma? I think transparency. I think that what was missing from the mental health conversation that kind of made me want to add my voice was transparency. So basically me like attempting suicide was one thing that the other person was like hanging over me. And so it was on Valentine's Day of 2017 and I was just like over it. And because I had like portrayed this social media image for so long, like, oh, Jordan's just perfect, she's just, like you said, you thought, but that's not the reality. I wanted to basically just go on Instagram and just say like, you know, a few months ago I was actually hospitalized for a suicide attempt, and since it was Valentine's Day, I kind of just wanted to talk about self-worth and value and like loving yourself. So I actually called my sister-in-law in the back and I was like, hey, I'm like, I want to post this on my Instagram, but like people are gonna think I'm nuts. And like, so I remember she was like, do you feel led to do it? And I was like, yes. And she was like, do it. So I did it, and I remember I deleted Instagram for like a few hours. I was like, oh my God, like, I have anxiety. And so I remember I downloaded the app the next morning, and like I can't begin to express, it's still on there, but like how much love and like support I received from people, and even people that were like, hey, I've actually been struggling with that too. Like you have no idea like how much your transparency is helping me. And so from that day forward, that was Valentine's Day of 2017. If you go look at my Instagram now, I am like the caption queen. Just because like I'm not, I mean, what you post on your social media is like what you post on your social media. But for me, like I always try to post with intention, especially because I know like the people, like my audience, like who, you know. So I always post with intent, but that is my life now. Like I'm just a transparent person. Like if you were to ask me like, oh, how was your trip here? Oh, I've been driving my friends and family crazy. Like it's actually been a little bit rough. It was raining. Like, but the typical me would be like, oh, it was nice. We had a nice trip, but that's not true, you know. So I think that just like I said, transparency. Even going back to education on mental health, I was never educated in the mental health arena, so I didn't know a lot about mental health. I just thought, like I said, when I thought of the mentally ill, oh, those are the crazy people. But when it applied to me, that's kind of where it's like, oh, you know, I'm just ignorant because I'm not educated in that arena. But I think that whether you are someone or whether you know somebody that has struggled with a form of mental illness, I feel that we all need to be educated. And obviously, like education, whether it's pertaining to mental health, like your major, it's always an ongoing process. So you can never learn too much, you know. But I think that that's something too that can help break the stigma is if we're educated in the mental health arena per se. I think more events, discussions, and pertaining to mental health. So like I said, I think that the more we come together, like the fact that this is an HBCU, it's a Friday, almost Friday night, and like you guys are all sitting in this room listening to me talk about mental health. Like to y'all that may be small, but to me on the inside, I'm like, Lord, that is like so crazy. Like that's a blessing, you know. But I think that the more this stuff like this is implemented, the more like we're gonna see our generation begin to shift. Because it's like people have been diagnosed with mental illness for like generations on generations and generations. But like I said, people don't really talk about mental health. I feel like it's only okay to talk about mental illness if it's behind closed doors. Or, you know, even like being a preacher's kid, just to be honest, like, oh, you're not depressed, we can just pray it away. And it's like, no, like depression is a real illness. And I feel like any part of your body can get sick, including your mind. So it's like, wouldn't you, if you run or you like work out or like you play sports, like you take care of your body, so why wouldn't we take care of our minds the same way? So even filtering the things that you put in your mind, the things that go through your eye gates, like what are you looking at? Like what are you hearing? You know what I mean? What kind of people do you hang around? So for me, like I said, the exact thing that I tried to flee from, which was community, is exactly what saved my life. So like being forced to be in a community of people who like support me and love me and see like my potential past like my circumstance. Because really that's why I attempted suicide. Like, yeah, I looked like I just had this perfect life, but like in that moment I couldn't see past what was happening in the present time. So I just think, like I said, more events like this, whether it be at a university, whether it's like you just get some girls together and you're like, look, I just want, like, how are y'all? And not just asking just to like check it off your list, but asking and being okay with hearing their truth. So if they are like, you know, I feel like I want to kill myself sometime. I feel like I just want to shoot myself in the face. Like, yeah, that is a lot to take in, but like you have to think like, if you don't, one thing about me, I've always been afraid of like always just being 100% honest. Just I would rather tell people like what I thought they wanted to hear rather than just like share my truth. But it's like, even the Bible says like love rejoices in truth. So I think that just being honest and creating like a safe space is essential to helping break in the stigma. So that's, like I said, going back to like I Live, that's exactly what it is. It's like a safe place for people to be like, you know, I'm not okay. Like, I need some help. Like, what are your resources? Like, how can you help me? And a lot of times I think that, you know, people are more prone to be honest and transparent if it's like, what is what I'm trying to say? If it's anonymous. So even like with the Instagram poll, yes, the people know I can see it, but I was like shocked at how many people were like, yes, I feel like I'm currently struggling with a form of mental illness. Like, even as people that are currently mentoring me as it pertains to my career field. So it's just like, you never know what somebody's going through, regardless of if they're made up, if they have a smile, like, you just never know. Like, the one thing you can say, or like, you don't know, like, your smile can literally save somebody's life just by, hey, good morning, like, how are you? Like, you just never know. So I think that events like these are like a good start, but it's like, what are we going to do after events like these? So not just like throwing the bait, but like, what is the prevention, you know what I mean? So like I said, I'm just thankful that you guys are even having something like this, because especially in the African American community, I feel like it's essential. And even like kids, like how many kids, let alone in Ohio in 2017, died because they committed suicide? A 6-year-old that lived in Cincinnati literally hung himself. Like, it's just crazy because we can prevent that stuff. Like, I don't think it's, oh, we need to be creating more films. I think that films like are a start, but what is the action? You know what I mean? Like, what steps are we going to take to prevent this kind of stuff? Because I think it can definitely be prevented. But the reality is that we're all struggling, whether you want to admit it or not. But it's more so just about, okay, so now that I know I'm struggling, what can I do to prevent? So, yes. I think that's it. Maybe. Yeah. So I guess I wanted to open it up for like Q&A in regards to like if anyone has questions, and not just questions, but even if there's like something you want to share with me, but just kind of anything as it pertains to mental health in media. Yes.
What do you think us as journalists can do to try to end this stigma?
That's a good question. I think that we can deliver quality, accurate news. I think that a lot of times, I was telling them on the way here, being in the media industry, not you guys, but we always want to be first. Like, nobody cares about accuracy anymore. It's all about who delivered the news first. So I think that even the way we spin stories, like, yeah, we have to be biased, we have to report the facts, but I think that there's a way, even how sometimes, you know, it could be an African-American male that's 6 years old and he robbed a store. They'll label him as like this crazy man that did all this stuff, but a Caucasian boy can do something, same age, same size, everything, and they'll label him as like an orphan or like something like that. So like, being in the media, we do play a part in that. Like, all people, sometimes people don't even read the story, they read the headline. The headline is what draws you to the story. So it's just like, I feel like there's a lot that we can do as it pertains to like shaping how mental health is perceived. But I know we have to state the facts, but there's a way to do it. I think. Anybody else? Yes.
Okay, my name is Sheree. You said you have a therapist, so like how did your parents react when you
You guys know the answer to that. How did my parents react?
yeah, like
to
what
therapist?
was there, like were they supportive of you going to a therapist?
So actually, it was my parents that made me go. Like, legally, I had to go, but I was like, I'm not seeing no therapist. I'm good. Like, I don't need to talk to nobody. So it was my parents that were like, you know, we love you, we support you. Like, this is what you need to do. Obviously, you're an adult, but like, you need to go. So even like my first session with her, before I was saved, I was very like just mean, just to be honest. I was very nasty to her, even though I knew she was trying to help me. But they were definitely in support. Like I said, like they are the ones who like encouraged me to go. But now looking back in hindsight, if they wouldn't have encouraged me to go see her, I would not be standing here right now. I would probably be drunk somewhere, still concerned about what was. So they were like, yeah, they were in support of that. And I'm thankful for that because I know that's not everybody's storyline. Not everybody comes from my type of background or like has two parents, stable parents that like want to see me progress per se. So I am thankful for that I had that support from not just my family but my friends. So yeah, definitely appreciate it. Anybody else? Mm-hmm.
My name is Reggie.
Reggie? Hi Reggie.
I wanted to ask about the situation after the overdose, going to the ER and the psychiatric hospital. Do you have any memories from that experience?
I do. Well, you guys kind of saw the picture. I like to have the picture I was going to show it, but you guys kind of saw it. So, first night, went from, the emergency room to the psych ward. So when I get there, my parents were basically like trying to tell me what was getting ready to take place. And so I don't even feel like frantic is the word. I was just like screaming at the top of my lungs. I was crying. I was like, I don't want to stay here. And they're like, obviously it's like emotional. Too, I try to remind myself of that too. It didn't just happen to me. Like it affected my family. Everybody who cares about me was affected by this. It didn't just affect me. And so I was just traumatized. I didn't want to stay. And so my parents basically like, we went in this room. It was me, my parents, and a doctor, I think. And she was basically just going over like everything with me. And so that night, I remember they told me you're gonna be here for 2 days. So they take me back to, that's a good question. They take me back to my unit, and there was, I believe, 3 different units. I was in the most calm unit. First night, go back to my room, and there's a man, literally, man, throwing chairs, screaming on top of his lungs, just acting irate. So, like, I am freaked out. Like, oh my God, like, this is real. Like, these people are crazy. Like, just so dramatic. So I remember I called my mom, and I'm just crying. I'm like, please, I don't want to stay. And so I can hear my parents, not just my mom, but my mom and my dad on the phone crying as well. And so they're just like, we know, but, like, you have to go through this. And so first night was definitely the worst. Like I say now, it was the most humbling thing I've ever been through. But yeah, so as I had to sit there for 7 days a week. So as the days went on, first day I stayed in my room all day. I was kind of to myself. It was like one room like this, a curtain, and so me and then another girl. And so, like I said, I was told that I would have to stay there for 2 days. 2 days turned into you have to prove that you can get out. So it's like if you're secluded and you're in your room, you're not gonna be able to leave. But I didn't know that till like day 2 or 3. So I kind of like began to like break out of my shell and like interact and stuff like that. I met a lot of like interesting people while I was there. But definitely very humbling. They would wake us up at 6 in the morning every day, and we had to take antidepressants. I took them for a little bit when I was out the hospital, but I stopped taking them because they would make me sick. I think just because I wasn't used to taking medication. But had to take medications, had to attend like certain classes, and basically the classes were kind of like this. So we would like get in a room and they would just ask us like weird stuff, like, so how do you feel? Like, you know. But it was definitely different for me just because it's like, in that moment was when I realized like I didn't mean to do this. Like I didn't want to die. I just feel numb in that moment. But being in the psychiatric ward, it kind of brought everything full circle to me and made me begin to process like, how did you get here? Like you're in a psych ward with people that are real schizophrenic, people who have real mental illnesses. How did you get here? You know? So I think that, to be honest, I feel like if I wouldn't have gone through that, I would still be trying to hold on to the residue of that relationship. I wouldn't have a job in my career field. I wouldn't be graduating on time. That's another thing. Like when I was in the psychiatric hospital, missed all my finals, so I had to do an additional semester of school. So it was just like there was a lot that trickled down because of that one action. You know what I mean? But being in the psychiatric hospital, like I said, was the most humbling thing I've ever been. So, yes.
Before you committed suicide, was anybody around you like aware how you were feeling? Or was it something that you kept to yourself?
I think people knew I was like sad all the time because this relationship, because like I was basically playing wife like as a girlfriend with a promise ring. So, but I think people like close to me had a kind of idea. But even like the night I did it, this is my family. This is my friend Maisha. She's also part of my I Live the Movement business team. My cousin Nautica, and then my sister-in-law. And so the night that I actually did it, I had went to my sister-in-law's house like hours before, and I don't remember what he did a couple things, but I was like basically just telling her like, this is what he did again, like I don't know what to do. And so she was basically just like praying with me, like trying to give me wise counsel, kind of get me through it. And so that night I told myself, like, I planned it. Like I said, I'm gonna go to the bar. I know my dad had like a slip disc in his vertebrae, so he had like a lot of prescription pills. And so I planned it to be real. And I actually planned to do it a week prior to, but I just like, when you're in that moment, I was just like, I can't do it. But that night I was just so like, I felt like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders to the point to where I would have rather died than not been in that relationship. So it kind of was planned. And even in that moment, like I had asked a friend from Ohio State to go to the bar with me. I've always been the friend that like I'd rather play like designated driver than drink. So when I'm asking her like to go to the bar, she's like, for what? Like, you wanna go read books? Like, what you wanna do? So the fact that like she went to the bar with me, she was drinking with me, and she knew something was wrong because I wanted to drink. But to this day, like I always have to tell her, like, especially because she's seen like the momentum of even like how my nonprofit has like grown in a year and all this stuff. Like she feels like she contributed to that process of me trying to kill myself, but she didn't know. You know what I mean? So it was planned, unfortunately. But yes. Oh.
You can go to the
Okay.
Just as a family member that, like you said, she was there. She came to my house before her attempt. I think what was hard was you kind of labeled it to relationship issues. And so it's like, oh, she's just going through really bad relationship issues. And Jordan is kind of dramatic.
Very.
So that's a very humbling thing, and I think that's what we learned was your friends that are very emotional or passionate in the way they express their feelings, to stop labeling them as dramatic. Because when you label them dramatic, when they do reach out or when they say things, it's like, oh, they're just being dramatic. Or like, I'd rather die than be without Johnny. It's like, oh, she's just being dramatic. But that's her reality. And so at some point, as friends or as family, taking people literally for what they mean, and they'll be mad at you in the moment. Like, okay, that's not healthy. We need to make a powwow with your parents because this kind of feeling of you rather be with someone than be not alive is not okay. And just as friends, like she said, her friend didn't know, but her friend knew that she didn't drink. So it was like, as your friends, if your friends are acting out of character, if they're kind of isolating themselves, if when you tell them like an honest perception of reality that has nothing to do with a critique, but just, no, I think you perceive that wrong, and they kind of get irate or upset, those are kind of things that you need to pay attention to. They're not just tripping. You know, like sometimes you'll be like, oh, they're just tripping because I told them the truth. And it's like, but why are they tripping? Why was it when you told them the reality of the situation, they freaked out? Those were signs that were very subtle, but if they're close to you, are signs that you should pay attention to. And if you're in groups of friends, I would say, like, you know how some of you share best friends or you might share the same type of friends, you should be communicating amongst each other about that, because when I would give her honesty, she would block me, she would block my number, and then talk to somebody else. But if we were in communication with amongst each other, we would have known that something was kind of like off. And I can't say that you will ever always be able to detect when someone is that way, because that's not the truth. But I think that communication amongst networks of friends, making sure that you hold your friends to their integrity levels. So if you know they're not drinkers, but they want to drink, don't take them to the party. Don't give them the drink. Don't let them go hang out with that guy she just met. Or for males, if he's hanging out with people that he doesn't normally hang out with, don't let them do that. Like, be the truth. Be the honesty that they need, because they might be holding on to that, and that might be the thing that turn them towards purpose. To say, like, yo, you're right, I don't need this drink, let me go home. Let me not do that. So I just wanted to put that.
Very true. Oh, we'll go this way. So you can
Now that you're reporting stories, how do you protect your mental health from there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, so you're exposed to all of that and you have to read it, analyze it, and report it. So how do you protect your mental health from that?
literally the grace of God. Like, especially now in my job, I'm not where I want to be. It's a start, but I'm not where I want to be. So I've been trying to condition myself to where, like, when I'm talking to work, it's about work. I'm here to do a job. I'm here to get paid. Like, yeah, journalism is what I love. But now, like, I feel like the more I yield to what God wants me to do, the more my desires are beginning to change. So it's like now that He's given me, per se, the desires in my heart, it's like, do I really want this? Like, I have all this experience. I have references galore. Like, I know a lot of people, but literally the grace of God. So like you said, 2 weeks ago, Dead Body? 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago, there was a